So today's discussion is going to be about wealth culture and poverty culture and the differences in mindset between them. So I invite you to, as you're listening to what I'm saying, just think about which one you think that you relate to the most. Is it poverty culture, wealth culture? And basically, as I speak my piece, you'll be able to draw a conclusion from that and determine which side you identify with the most. Stay tuned. So think about how you value money. Think about how you view it. What's your perspective of money and the people who have it in abundance? Right? Do you have a positive view of it, or do you have a negative view of it? So, in my experiences growing up around poor people, there's a lot of similarities between person to person, right? And I started to understand that poor people generally have a very negative view of money and people who had it in abundance. You'd hear things from a very early age like money is the root of all evil, it's the cause of all the problems in the world. Money corrupts everything. It ruins relationships. It ruins families, friendships, right? You'll hear a lot of negativity around it like that. They'll view people who have money in abundance, successful people, they'll view them as these selfish, self-indulgent, greedy people, right? Who just splurge and just excessively spend and do things without regard for anyone else. Right? And now one thing that I noticed, right, is that obviously if you have a negative view towards something, you're a lot less likely to be around it, right? If you don't do drugs and you just absolutely detest drugs, you're probably not going to be hanging around people who do the thing you hate, right? They're not going to be doing drugs. You're not going to be around them. You're not going to be good friends with them. You're not going to travel in those circles, right? And the same thing goes with money, right? If you have a negative view of money and people who have a lot of it, or successful people, you're not going to be around them, and you're not going to be around money. You're not going to have much of it, right? Because of your negative view of it is going to push you away from it. And so it works the same way. And so that's very interesting to me. And then on the polar opposite side, you have wealth culture, right? And from my experiences, I've actually got to experience people from poverty culture and people from wealth culture. Okay. And now on the wealth culture side, you have people who are actually very generous, and they've educated me a lot. I've had family members who subscribe to poverty culture, and you go to their house and ask for something to drink, and they'll pour you a half a cup, right? Whereas you have wealthy people, you go to their house and they say, yeah, fill the cup all the way, have as much as you want, right? Wealthy people have taught me, amazing things, life-changing things. They've taught me, how to deal with money, how to earn income, different things like that, what to use it for, how to use it, right? They've shared with me their stories. And a lot of the wealthy people that I know, they used to be poor, right? But the thing is that you can be broke in your bank account, but then still be wealthy at the same time. It's really all about the mindset that you have and the mindset that you cultivate. And so even if you're poor, you're broke, don't really have much money in your account, if you have a wealthy mindset, then eventually you become wealthy because you gravitate towards that. And so as you adopt a positive mindset towards it, you will then attract it to you. As you adopt a positive mindset towards wealthy people, you will gravitate towards them, and they will gravitate towards you. And this is what happens, and what I come to find out is that wealthy people just view money as a resource. It's not the devil, it's not God, it's not anything. It's just a thing to use to manifest your vision, and then to grow your vision. That's all it is, right? And so you start out small, but you have big dreams, and then the more money you make, the more you can just turn those big dreams into big goals, and those big goals into big realities. And that's how that works. So definitely ask yourself, where do you stand? Do you have a negative view towards it, or do you have a positive view towards it? Let's move on. So now think about how do you earn income? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you self-employed? Do you trade your time for money, or do you trade money for money? Right? Do you know how to use and leverage your money, or do you just leverage your time for money? Right? How much are you willing to accept? How underpaid are you willing to be, right, in order to earn income, in order to pay your bills and buy food and etc., right? So generally in poverty culture, what I notice is that the average person, or pretty much every person in poverty culture, they'll get a job and they'll try to work as many hours as they can on that job in order to maximize their check at the end of the pay period, right? So people will work 40, 60, 80, 100, 120 hours a pay period in order to have, in order just to make ends meet, or, a little bit more than just to make ends meet, right? But one thing I notice is that when you trade your time for money, what you're really doing is you're trading away a resource that's not renewable for a resource that is, right? So time is not renewable, right? You can't buy it back, you can't get it back. But money, you can spend it, you can trade it in, you can get it back, or you can play with it. And so when you trade an unrenewable resource for a renewable resource, it's not exactly a good deal, and it's not particularly too smart. But poverty culture is used to that, right? Trade away all your time so that you can have money to pay your bills. And so what happens is that you work for the majority of your life being underpaid until you're in your 60s going on 70 before you retire. All your time is gone, right? And then you're left with what? How much money, right? And so the big thing now is that, people are in fear for their social security, right? And a lot of people, they retire and they don't really have much money to even live off of. So they've worked their whole entire life and they really didn't come out with much in the end, right? It's very unfortunate, but this is a big factor in poverty culture. A lot of people, they work 1, 2, and even 3 full-time jobs, and they trade away pretty much every hour of free time they have, even when they have kids and different things like that, and they got to put them in daycare and all of this, and they don't really get to spend much time around their kids, but they do that, because they think that's their only choice. And in poverty culture, this is an honest belief. You have to get a job, work your ass off, and spend all your time at work in order to have money, right? Now, the interesting thing is that on the wealth culture side, they trade money for money, right? Basically using and leveraging the money you already have in order to invest it in something that's going to make you more money, and in turn give you more time freedom, right? Because now a big part of the way money can potentially work is it frees up your time, right? It's kind of like if you pay someone to do a task for you, that frees up your time to go do something else, because they're spending their time to do it, not you. And so on the wealthy side, it's like, well, how much money do I have to use in order to free up my time to pursue other opportunities, right? So it's a very strategic, cerebral process, right? It's not like just go to work every day and just trade in, your days and weeks and months and years just to have, some mediocre income. Or even if you have a good income, you may have a decent income, but the thing is you have no time freedom to even enjoy it, and again, I've also been around people who have a lot of money, but they have no free time, right? And so it's like, really, what is the difference between a poor person who has no money to buy food, so they don't eat? What is the difference between that versus a person who has a lot of money, but they don't have the time to sit down and eat a meal, right? So they don't eat. I met poor people who don't eat. I met people who have a lot of money who don't eat, right? And just because you have a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean that you subscribe to wealth culture. Right? You're just working very hard but not very smart, and working hard and not working smart is a big difference between poverty culture and wealth culture. And so what I really want you to do is ask yourself, am I just trading away all of my time for a paycheck, or am I taking the money I have and then reinvesting it into something that's going to free up my time and multiply my income that I already have? A big part of poverty culture is consumerism, reckless consumerism that is pushed into the category of making bad investments, right? So when I talk about consumerism, what I mean is just like you're just buying stuff, right? You're not really getting much value in return, but you're just buying things, right? You know, shiny new things that kind of make you feel good about yourself for a little while, right? Like a new cell phone that you don't necessarily need, right? Or a new handbag that costs, and it's a little bit too expensive and you can't necessarily afford it, or overpriced sneakers or shoes, right? Something that looks good, right? It has some kind of social status, different things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you spend an overwhelming majority of your money on these things, that's a poor investment, because you don't even really have the budget for it. And a lot of people who subscribe to poverty culture don't understand how to budget. And so don't get me wrong, now consumerism is on the poverty culture and wealth culture, right? Wealthy people spend tons of money on things that we view as ridiculous, right? You'd spend you got rich people who would spend like $1,000 on a pillow, right? But they have the budget to do it, right? And they have the budget to do it because they're more inclined to make good investments that increase the size of their budget. Whereas in poverty culture, you don't really make a budget. You just, I have $700. I'm going to spend like $400 of that money on new clothes, right? And then I'm going to go out to a bar and then spend another $100 on drinks, right? And stuff like that. You know, like foolishness that doesn't really yield you anything in return. And so that's the thing in them. When you're not budgeting and you're just being reckless with your money and making these bad investments, it's hard for you to get any kind of financial freedom, because you're caught in this endless cycle of consumerism and bad investments. And so another thing that I want to talk about is in poverty culture is bad health, right? Because in poverty culture, people often tend to be very cheap with their goals. They're very cheap with themselves. They don't invest in themselves. They're more likely to invest in, like, you know, a new flat screen TV, you know, or rather than invest in, you know, a business opportunity or a fitness coach or organic food, right? Or just healthy food in general. Poverty culture, that's just not a big thing. They'd rather eat off the dollar menu at McDonald's rather than go to an organic food store and get something that's actually good for you. See? They'd get the cheapest gym membership and they wouldn't pay for training and just try to wing it on their own. And so now the differences there that I see is that on the wealth culture side, they're more inclined to health. You know, they'll invest in organic foods. They'll get a fitness coach that teaches them and shows them how to get in shape. They'll invest in business opportunities to make them more money, to increase their budget. They'll invest in books, reading material, education, right? The only form of education that I know of poverty culture to really invest in is college, right? But college is like this institution now that takes advantage of poverty in the hopes of, I'll go to school, get a degree, and then get a job where I can now spend all my time trading all my time for money, right? So it perpetuates the cycle. But, you know, definitely think about now, if you don't have something like a fitness coach that shows you how to get in shape, then you're basically going to be just trying to figure it out on your own. But when you're trying to figure it out on your own, you're actually wasting more time doing that. And what happens is that on the poverty culture side, they would rather spend more time winging it rather than spending the money to shorten their learning curve and save them time on the process. And what happens is that when you spend time winging it, you often fail, right? Because you just don't know how to do it. And then when you fail, you quit, right? It's either you quit or you just keep investing more time and just not having any luck, but you just keep investing that time because you didn't want to put in the money because you say you can't afford it. And on poverty culture, even if they do have the money for something to invest in themselves, they'll say they can't afford it. It's weird. You know what I mean? They'd rather spend $200 on like junk food and shoes and whatever rather than spend $200 on education or a book or something like that, right? And so that's another thing where they're very cheap with themselves and cheap with their goals and always trying to search for a free method or a free route or a very cheap route, lowest price, right? Whereas in wealth culture, it's the complete opposite. So definitely think about, where you fit in that mindset. What do you invest your money in? Do you budget? If you're out of shape, did you get a fitness coach? How do you eat? Are you cheap with your food? What do you do, right? What do you do with your money? Do you make good investments or bad investments? And if you have a pattern of following bad investments, then you know where you lie. And if you have a pattern of good investments, then you know where you lie. So definitely take a look at your actions, and you can determine where at you are on both ends of the spectrum. So a big part of knowing where you're going and how to get there is knowing where you are, right? So hopefully I was able to do that with the things that I've said and the examples that I've given. Knowing which side of the fence you're on, and once you know which side of the fence you're on, you basically know how to cross it. So if you're trying to be more wealthy, understand that starts with your mindset. It starts with your behavior, right? Not your account. Right? Because if you're working a job, cool. But what a wealthy mindset is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to set a budget. It's going to allow you to seek time freedom by leveraging your money as opposed to just continuing to leverage your time. Right? It's going to allow you to have a more positive mindset, a more positive view of wealthy people, rich people, and money itself in general. And so once you start cultivating that mindset that allows you to do those things, to earn smart, to spend smart, and to have a positive view of the things that you want, once you're able to cultivate a mindset like that and you do it for long enough, you just automatically kind of just cross the fence, right? And the thing is that now you can go from poverty culture to wealth culture, and you can also go from wealth culture to poverty culture. Right? A lot of wealthy people, they may lose their wealth by being arrogant and cocky, and they lose a humble mindset. And the next thing you know, they're broke. And that happens to a lot of wealthy people. And now a lot of poor people, they become humble, change their mindset, and they're wealthy. Right? So it goes to both ways. But basically, whatever side of the fence you feel comfortable being on, hopefully that the things that I've said will allow you to make the adjustments to get the lifestyle that you want. So in closing, right, check out my blog, remnoire.com. You can contact me, reach out to me, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Remnoire is my handle on all of them. So whether you're on Instagram, Twitter, it's just at Remnoire, REMNOIRE. Having said that, enjoy your day. Hope this helps. Take care.